in the first
Sorry,
season.
just to add one thing. I love how they're like too afraid to touch that.
But seeing as you guys are a bunch of girls, I'll make an exception.
Can they just at least remake it and not make it worse? I feel like that's not too much to ask.
All right, so Avatar: The Last Airbender fans, be warned. The new series that is coming to Netflix in live action here in the next month is going to be different than what you're familiar with when it comes to the animated series on Nickelodeon that you grew up watching. The Avatar: The Last Airbender live action series is going to be more serious in tone. We're going to see things that we did not see in the original show, such as the genocide and extermination of the Airbender peoples. And as cast revealed here in just the past week, the character of Sokka of the Water Tribe is going to be made less sexist than he was in the animated TV show. This is a beloved character and one of my favorites. I know it's one of Brad Polumbo's favorites, and he joins me right now on Bounding into Comics. Brad Polumbo, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's good to see you, my friend. So you and I are going to have a little disagreement about this. Retconning Sokka's sexism out of Avatar for this live action series. Worthwhile or trash?
I think it's silly. I mean, the actors were asked about it and they said it's because it wouldn't play well in live action, which makes me doubt whether they even really understand the source material they're working with. I mean, they're taking what is essentially a feminist subplot, a arc of character development in Sokka in the original series where he starts out as kind of crude and boorish towards girls in the way that many a teenage boy once upon a time has been, and then is repeatedly humbled and evolves in that view throughout the course of the series. It's actually a feminist plot in many ways, right? To show how dumb kind of boorish ideas about women are. And yet they're removing it and they think they're being progressive or woke or something. I mean, I've been looking, I think it's silly. And I'll say, from what I can tell, it is not going over well with the fans, even on Reddit and Twitter, two of the most liberal, woke sub pools of people imaginable. The comment section is absolutely roasting them for this because essentially it seems like they don't even understand that this wasn't outdated sexism just put in there for its own sake because the creators were bigots or something. It was a character arc development plot tool.
Sorry, ladies, didn't mean to interrupt your dance lesson.
And I don't know if they think that we can't even depict offensive things now, even in the context of overcoming them. But I find it really disheartening. And just, it's like they're only doing remakes now. They have nothing original, or not nothing, but like we're seeing so many remakes of everything. Can they just at least remake it and not make it worse? I feel like that's not too much to ask.
Beach party!
The character of Sokka in the animated series, again, absolutely lovable. Not only do fans love Sokka, young boys watching that show love Sokka, young girls think he's funny in his own way, and it's very easily demonstrated throughout the show. He's a ladies' man. People are drawn to Sokka despite some of his boorish behavior and just really retrograde opinions that he grows out of over the course of the show. But here's the thing. I actually think that we should take the actors somewhat at their word here when they described Sokka's sexist trait as iffy when they were approaching it in this script. They didn't say problematic. And if they had, my alarm bells would have been going off. They said it was like iffy. And I get that. When you think about some of the things that Sokka says when he's on screen,
leave it to a girl to screw things up.
Girls are better at fixing pants than guys, and guys are better at hunting. It's just the nature of things. I try to imagine that coming from like an older teenager male character in a live action show that is more serious in tone. And I just want to throw myself out a window because we have to endure this sort of pig-headed behavior in this format. And then that character is going to be set straight by every Mary Sue that comes across the screen, virtuous Katara, who's perfect at everything, and then Suki, who's going to kick his butt later in the show and show him how to be polite to women. I don't think we need any more of this very elementary feminist lectures in this show. We grew up on it. We learned the little lesson about how not to act like playground boys in treating girls, and we can now tell a different story. But I don't think Sokka loses anything important, and I'll tell you why, just to close out. His arc is about learning to become a man, learning to become a leader in the absence of his father. Is it truly required for that arc to fulfill itself for him to have to go through all these lectures from feminist characters on screen?
I think part of it's about doing service so the character actually makes sense. I mean, this is what is he 16 when the series starts or something, and he's been raised in a tribe
Yeah, he's
where the
15
men.
in the animated series, and they made him 16 for the live action for some reason.
Okay, so 15, and he's been raised in a tribe where the men go to war, like very traditional gender roles. The idea that he would start the series with having totally neutral yes girl boss attitudes already ingrained in him, it doesn't strike me as realistic. I do take your point absolutely that like translated verbatim those scenes wouldn't work, but I don't think that's what they're doing. I don't think they're just acting out the script of the show, right? They're obviously going to have a different script and different dialogue, and they're removing this element, right? That's what the actress who's playing Katara said, that they're removing the element of the sexism from his character. I think they could have done it slightly differently, right? Like the words, obviously it was done in a very crude way because it was a cartoon, but I think like many things are being translated into a more serious way in the real action, in the like real action version. I think they could have done that with the sexism arc as well. And I don't know, I do kind of think that it's hard to separate becoming a man, especially for, you know, a heterosexual character, from how you view and treat women. That is a pretty that's a pretty integral part of what it is to become a man and how men evolve through teenage years and boorishness to becoming a man. And I think they could have done it in a way that was more serious and less crude than the cartoon and wasn't overly preachy and feministy and just kind of was more true to the spirit, but not necessarily. It would be on the nose to have him say, leave it to a girl to mess things up. But there's ways you could rewrite that to be more realistic, like something people would actually say or actually would happen without totally scrapping what was an interesting and important element of a beloved character.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to imagine Sokka from Avatar without that sort of dialogue and those jokes and that ribbing of girls throughout the show. But when I imagine, again, this playing out in live action, I think that there's only one way that you could try to work this into Sokka's character in this format. I don't know if you ever saw the Predator movie that came out on Hulu. I don't know if you're a big Predator fan like I am, but
No.
so Predator did sort of a Native American movie where one of the Native American girl characters has a older brother, and he's kind of constantly trying to tell her, like, go back to the village, work on sewing, work on cooking, be a woman. Da, 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 da. She wants to be a warrior, and the whole movie is basically just about she's going to fight and kill the predator, and he's trying to drive her back to the village. I think like Sokka could sort of basically fulfill that same sort of role, that traditionalist viewpoint about roles in society and where people belong. I have a job to stand in for dad while he's gone and do X, Y, and Z combat kind of stuff. And your job is to help the village, to educate the children, to help make food and sew clothes. And everybody has to do their part. I could see that being workable. And maybe that is what they're going to do. Like they're taking
But I
this.
think they probably view that as the sexism element to his character, right? The type of people that would be directing and creating this series probably have an expansive view of what is sexism that encompasses something like traditional gender roles. Because I agree, you could do it in a more subtle way about gender roles and less about overt girls suck, you know, childish sexism. But my reading of this, and we won't know till it comes out, so I guess we'll have to see, is that they're going to just scrap that plot line entirely. And I think that'd be a shame. I don't know. I think remaking stuff and so many classic things could not exist. I was a big Glee fan throughout the 2000s. And at the
I'm
time,
shocked.
it was a radically progressive woke show. And you watch it back now and it could never air today. And I'm being only slightly hyperbolic here, without riots in the streets, the jokes they make about race, the jokes they make about special needs, all these things. And it was all done in this like positive way that was actually supposed to point out how goofy the distinctions we make between people actually are. But you could never do it today because the mere depiction of any form of bigotry or anything that's not politically correct, I think these people making this stuff are increasingly just terrified of offending a couple people on Twitter. And they would
Yeah,
rather go somewhere that's just anodyne and risk free than risk offending people. And that's not a good way to create art.
I think risk-free is a good way to put it. Somebody was describing this to me yesterday as, it's like you wanna go into the kitchen, but you don't wanna play with any knives. You don't wanna use any sort of dangerous implements in order to make your meal, and, like, you're going into Avatar, there is this one little dangerous element, which is how do you deal with, some of the sexist attitudes of many of its beloved characters? In the first
Sorry,
season.
just to add one thing. I love how they're like too afraid to touch that, but they are going to show the literal genocide. Like,
But hold on. I mean, come on. All right. So, like, but the genocide in a more serious tone show, showing everybody like a thing that was, I think people might have wanted to see as they got older, being an Avatar fan. Why did those two things have any sort of tangential connection?
well, I think they should show it, to be clear. But what I'm saying is they're clearly not afraid. It's not like they're trying to completely sanitize it. They're just trying to sanitize it about specific things that offend extremely online social justice activists.
And
If
so I
it's
think that's the thing about the
overall,
kitchen tools. Like, if you
yeah.
want to do an Avatar show or a movie, you have to take all of it and you have to actually tell that story and be comfortable going into the kitchen and using the tools no matter how sharp they are. But my thing here is that this is a lose-lose because I spend a lot of time with fans of different franchises, particularly ones who are exhausted with the really repetitive, strong, independent female archetype who's always stepping over and on every male character who she's ever around. And if they kept it the same, it would be that times 10, right? It would be annoying as hell. Now, if they remove that element from Sokka and have him go on a different journey, but that's sort of in the same direction of how to be a man, I still think that you can have a better Sokka and a better story where then we don't have to have the same debates about strong, independent female characters squashing every guy in her midst.
I guess I just don't think they have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I think they could
Mhm.
avoid the cringeworthiness of a overly literal translation into real action without scrapping the element entirely. I mean, why make a remake if you're just going to pick thing? I don't know. Maybe this is just my unit, but for example, like when I watch one of the things I really like when I'm watching something that was originally a book or originally another series, and it is close to exactly the same thing rather than second guessing it or making it super different. That actually really bothers me when I watch something and it's noticeably different than the source material. It's like, if you're smart and if you guys have the talent, go make your own thing. If you're going to do a remake, like, don't mess with something people love in profound and fundamental ways while also riding the coattails of people's love for that thing to
Mhm.
actually make it a success.
I think you have a really strong point there. And I am willing to concede that if you're going to do a story, you don't get to just go in and change fundamental ingredients because you feel like they're iffy. I think that that's a fair point. I think the thing that I just would probably die on this hill is that there are going to be people who roll their eyes at this either way.
Yeah.
Because either situation, you're going to sort of get this very tired feminism dynamic that is going to make Sokka look pretty bad in either situation. But I'll tell you what thing they need to absolutely keep regarding the Battle of the Sexes, and it is his relationship with Suki. That is going to happen in this first season of this show, where Sokka goes to the Kyoshi Island, gets involved with the Kyoshi warriors, does his be a male heartthrob thing all over the place, and Suki actually does fall for him. And he then, learns to treat her like a warrior and not just like a little girl. And during a battle, they are alone. And he says to her, "I'm sorry. I should have treated you like a warrior. Instead, I was treating you like a girl." And Suki leans over to him. I'm in the middle of the battle. And she says, "I am a warrior, but I'm a girl too." And she gives him a kiss on the cheek. And it's like, that's one of the greatest moments of gender politics that happens in all of Avatar, which is that you can have both. And I think all of modern media has said no to having both. It always has to be these strong, independent female characters who don't need anybody and are not available for the vulnerability of romantic bonds without diminishing male characters. And like Avatar actually did it right.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Leave it to a girl to screw things up.
You are the most sexist.
Stop bugging her, Airhead. You need to give girls space when they do their sewing.
What does me being a girl have to do with sewing?
Simple. Girls are better at fixing pants than guys, and guys are better at hunting and fighting and stuff like that.
It's
just
simple.
the natural order of things. Show yourselves, coward! Who are you? Where are the men who ambushed us?
There were no men. We ambushed you.
Wait a second. There's no way a bunch of girls took us down. Sorry, ladies. Didn't mean to interrupt your dance lesson.
I didn't know you were friends with the Avatar.
It's all right. I mean, normally I'd hold a grudge, but seeing as you guys are a bunch of girls, I'll make an exception.
I will tell you, though, at the end of season 1, the guy who heads up the Northern Water Tribe, I can't remember his name. He's the elder of the Northern Water Tribe village that Katara has to learn how to do water bending from, who won't teach a girl.
Mhm.
I wonder how they're going to do that.
I wonder. Or will that
I
be
bet-
scrapped?
Well, I bet they'll keep it because then they can make elders look bad. They can they can make the older generations look bad, and they don't want to involve girls in anything, but they're going to save Sokka from that. You know, like quote unquote save him from that, but they're going to definitely pin it on that water tribe man. Brad Polumbo, thank you so much for hopping on and talking about this.